The Arizona Cardinals have been busy in this free agency, and it continues as they sign Malcolm Butler to a one-year deal with $6 million. Another player that you think that Malcolm Butler, like, I like Malcolm Butler. I think he's a really good corner. I think he didn't come off his best year against when he was with Tennessee, but he still had 4 interceptions. He just got targeted a lot and made a lot of tackles. So it's like, we'll see. Maybe in Arizona he'll be better. But he's got a big role to fill now, especially since now he's taking over for the legend himself, Patrick Peterson. Moving into the next part of the show is multiple teams. And the reason why I say multiple teams because it was never said who was interested, but multiple teams are interested in Cincinnati Bengals running back Giovanni Bernard. Now, Giovanni Bernard, in a strange way, reminds me of Lance Dunbar, the Cowboys. For those few years that he played, he was a receiving back. He could run the ball, not as great, but he could run it. But as a receiver, yeah. And so the fact that multiple teams want his services is very interesting. It's one of those interesting bits of news during the free agency period that we're like, really? Okay, let's talk about it. Some more news that came out actually yesterday. Longtime Cowboys defensive lineman Crawford has announced that he is retiring after 8 years. This would have been his 9th year in the league. It was announced during Mike McCarthy's press conference, where he said that Crawford was retiring. And this past season for Crawford was not the best, probably one of the worst of his career. He had 2 sacks. He was coming off double hip surgery. He just didn't look like the same guy. Plain and simple. He didn't look the same guy. He didn't look healthy really during the season. And, like, that's a lot to say, especially when you're saying that when your whole body is, you use your hips pretty much for everything, if not everything. And now you're playing in the NFL, and like 4, 5, 6 months ago, you just had you had double hip surgery, and now you're going to play in the NFL. Like it just wasn't going to go very well. He had 2 sacks; those both came against the Cincinnati Bengals. But I do want to congratulate Crawford on a great career that he did have. He was his second longest tenured Cowboy as a player behind LP Ladouceur. Ladouceur is just what some people call him. It's Ladouceur, who is also getting moved on by the Cowboys for a guy named Jake McQuaid, who played for the Rams when John Fossil was there. And he's now signed a 1-year contract with the Dallas Cowboys to be a long snapper. Speaking of a 1-year contract, the Bucs have signed Leonard Fournette to a 1-year contract with $3.25 million. That could go up to $4 million. It has a chance. And that's not even including incentives. So it could go higher than that. Also in the Mike McCarthy press conference, he reacted to the Dak Prescott mega deal that he had signed, to which Mike McCarthy said, quote, "Dak is a keystone of this team," which I think he meant cornerstone, but he said keystone. And I'm also going to go with what NFL Network said, where they said that Mike McCarthy, how he said it, was like, "I wanted to do cartwheels in the sand," comparing to what CBS did, which was that he did. I'm going with NFL Network saying that he wanted to. News that just broke about a half hour ago. The Dolphins have traded the number 3rd overall pick in the 2021 NFL Draft to the San Francisco 49ers for the number 12 overall pick in the 2021 NFL Draft, a 3rd round pick, and in future number ones in the coming drafts. And it's not, we expect this from John Lynch, who is now the general manager of the San Francisco 49ers. It's not a draft if the 49ers don't trade up, trade back, do whatever. It's not the draft season if the 49ers don't trade up or down. So that's how you know we're in the home stretch for the draft. The Seahawks have also decided to resign Carlos Dunlap to a 2-year deal worth $16.6 million, $8.5 million guaranteed. And there was a lot of speculation that came out and said that if he was that cheap to go anywhere else, why wouldn't Seattle just bring him back? And that's what they chose to do. And it also, like, what we can say is Carlos Dunlap, when he went to Seattle, revolutionized that defensive line again. They became a better pass rushing crew, because before he got there, they were not very good against the pass. They were not good against the run in terms of their defensive line. But when he got there, when he got traded from Cincinnati, it's almost like they rised up and they just performed to expectation, which we'll get back into Seattle in a few short segments. The updated figures for these players were C.J. Beathard, who signed a 1-year contract, a 2-year contract with the Jacksonville Jaguars, $2.75 million guaranteed. And indication that he will be on the 2021 roster, giving more evidence that Gardner Minshew will not be. We'll see what happens. The New England Patriots, when they signed Lawrence Guy to their contract, there was a 4-year contract. It's worth $11.5 million. The 49ers, when they gave Quan Williams the contract that was a 1-year deal, it's worth $2.378 million. And now into really the bulk of the news that happened last night was the general manager of the Bills was talking about the looming extension for Josh Allen. If I was the Bills, you have a 5th-year option. Start doing the paperwork for the 5th-year option. Then wait a year-ish. If he does give you about similar numbers to what he gave you this year, then sign him to a big extension. You can sign him to a 5-year extension, which is what Denver did. When they had Von Miller, they signed him to a big extension, then used the opt-deal at the end of that contract. That's what they gotta do if you are the Bills. Go 1 more year, already do the paperwork for the option year, and then if he does well, sign him to a big extension. That's what you gotta do. Kazee has announced his decision to where he's going to go play for the 2021 season, and it is the Dallas Cowboys. He chose Dallas Cowboys because his former head coach, Dan Quinn, who drafted Kazee in the 5th round, is going to go to Dallas on a 1-year contract. As what we know so far, it's a vet minimum deal. So that means Kazee and Keanu Neal, both Atlanta Falcon guys, are now going to Dallas to play on the defense that Dan Quinn now coaches. This is going to be a very interesting move because we all heard about Kazee potentially going to Dallas, but Detroit was also on him too, and a few other teams. But they considered, what everyone said, how Keanu Neal put it, they considered Dan Quinn like a father figure. But the more interesting thing was Kazee and Malik Hooker, when they did the medicals on Wednesday, it came back that Kazee was good. He was good to go. But Malik Hooker wasn't. So, which is the reason why the report came out that they gave the contract offer to Kazee instead of Malik Hooker, even though there was a conflicting report that stated that they both got contract offers. That's not what happened. And the reason why probably Malik Hooker didn't get it was because probably his rehab wasn't going as well, or it wasn't as strong yet. And they said the interviews both went well. It was just like they probably were concerned with the medicals for Malik Hooker. And if you want more of this and go really in depth with this, go to Mike Fisher's YouTube channel. He works for CowboysSI.com. He goes into depth for like a month of this between Malik Hooker and Kazee. The Seattle Seahawks have decided to move on from Jaron Reed, who was a defensive tackle, was not very good, and it just didn't work out, unfortunately. We'll see where he goes. As we said before in the first segment, was because we're busy in this free agency. They're continuing to be busy because they're expected to sign Colt McCoy as a backup quarterback and partial mentor to Kyler Murray if he needs it. But also, if something does go wrong, they can put in a guy who has a chance to win. Adam Humphreys has decided to go sign with the Washington football team, which were hounding him to come to Washington, now creating a receiving core of Terry McLaurin, Curtis Samuel, and Adam Humphreys. A very dynamic receiving core. Matt Breida signed a one-year deal with the Buffalo Bills. And the interesting thing is Matt Breida has played for San Francisco, then he went to Miami last year, and now he's in Buffalo. I'm just waiting for the place where he can finally call home and stay there for a few years instead of jumping 1 year and then going to another team the next year. Speaking of a one-year contract, the Chiefs have re-signed Demarcus Robinson to a one-year contract, and that's because this free agency they haven't performed very well. And they need to keep a receiver in case if they can't bring back Sammy Watkins, because it looks like he may go to Baltimore. We see. Crazy things may happen. The NFL free agency and draft are very crazy. Speaking of the NFL could add an annual Black Friday game during the regular season. And since Amazon has the rights to this, they probably could do it. And it would be fun. I enjoyed having games throughout the week during COVID this year, so I think it would be fun. Since Amazon also has it, and a lot of people shop on Black Friday, it would work very well. The NFL also will not mandate players to get COVID vaccinations, but they will encourage it. They're expecting fans to get vaccinations, but they are not mandating players or coaches to get it, but they're encouraging it. Well, what do you guys think? How would you rate the Cowboys how would you rate the signing of Kazee going to the Dallas Cowboys? You decide.